What's up YouTube, it's the one and only legend of winning, aka Low, and for those out there who are unaware, the NBA lottery has just transpired a few days prior to me making this video, and with the lottery passing us along with me spending a little bit more time watching college basketball, what I decided to do is make my first ever mock draft for the 2018 NBA draft class. Now before you get all excited, just a few things that we must note. A, I am making this video before the combine, so there are some measurements and some lengths that may be a little bit off, so please excuse me. B, because I'm doing this so early in the process and there's still a lot of rumors about some of the prospects, there will be another mock draft soon to come once everything is updated. And finally, due to the lack of information, along with the fact that this video is probably going to be pretty long, I decided to just make this my top 10 picks of this year's draft class. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into it because again, it's probably going to be a long video. With the first overall pick in the 2018 draft class, in my opinion, the Phoenix Suns have a pretty obvious selection that they must make, as the organization over the past several seasons has consistently struggled to build an identity despite the fact that they have a star athlete, or at least a player who has the potential to be a star athlete in Devin Booker. This is an organization defensively that consistently struggles, has a hard time building some type of culture that promotes winning, and when it comes to their front court play, despite the fact that they have drafted certain prospects such as Dragon Bender, the lack of productivity that comes from their front court is pretty embarrassing. Because of their weaknesses, in my opinion, it's pretty obvious that they must draft DeAndre Ayton out of Arizona. Ayton is a 7-foot big who has a 7'5" wingspan, who has a pretty good feel on the defensive end and shows a lot of promise offensively. Also, when it comes to rebounding, that is a consistent void with the Phoenix Suns, and hopefully Ayton should be able to fill that void as well, as he was a consistent double-figure rebounder in college, along with the fact that Ayton is a pretty athletic along with pretty mobile big for someone his height and size. But in my honest opinion, the biggest reason why they must select Ayton is the fact that he comes across as one of the more NBA ready prospects in this year's draft class. Now with the second overall pick, we have the Sacramento Kings, and quite frankly, they can go in multiple directions because they really don't have a standout player on this roster, or at least in my opinion, they don't. Even though, yes, they just drafted De'Aaron Fox and we have to give him, along with Buddy Hield, a little bit more time, the reality is that this is an organization over the past 10 years that has consistently drafted in the lottery, a lot of times drafted in the top 10, and they have yet to gain any momentum in the right direction of building an actual franchise. Because of this, along with their lack of shooting, depth at the small forward position, and playmaking ability, in my honest opinion, their best pick would be Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic is an excellent passer, has really solid handling abilities, and when it comes to his basketball IQ, which in my opinion is the greatest aspect of his game, his feel for the game and his intangibles are unreal. And another great aspect in Luka Doncic's game is his experience while playing with other elite level talented players, as he has spent multiple years playing in different Euro leagues. And so even though, yes, Doncic's abilities may overlap with some other players on the roster, his ability to be versatile offensively, along with his experience in basketball IQ, should set him apart for some of the younger players and should make the transition from being a lottery team to hopefully a playoff team one day really smooth, or at least smoother than what it has been over the last decade. Now with the third overall pick, we have the Atlanta Hawks, an organization that has been flirting with hitting that restart button over the past several seasons, and finally, as this year seems as if they were completely committed to tanking, an organization that has some quality pieces such as John Collins along with Taurean Prince, but still again with no standout player. They consistently struggle to score throughout the entire season this year, which is the reason why I have the Atlanta Hawks selecting Marvin Bagley. A 6'11" power forward who's extremely versatile on both ends of the floor. Defensively, he gives a lot of effort on the pick and roll defense and doesn't mind switching on the ball handler, while on the offensive end, he's not afraid to create his own shot and showed a lot of promise in the post, as Duke really ran a lot of post plays with him. So his footwork is there, especially for someone at his age, which at 19 years old, that is something that is pretty rare, especially with someone who weighs as much as he does, which is definitely probably the biggest knock on Marvin Bagley entering the NBA. But even with the lack of weight, his versatility and his potential on the offensive end is more than enough to persuade the Atlanta Hawks to select him third overall, especially since it seems as if they need someone who's going to be a standout player moving forward for the organization. Next up, we have the Memphis Grizzlies with the 4th overall pick, and I'm not going to lie, this is extremely difficult because the direction that the Memphis Grizzlies could go in is almost endless, as the organization struggled significantly this past season due to Mike Conley suffering an injury. However, it's not completely clear of how good this roster is once he comes back, which again is extremely questionable because if you were the Memphis Grizzlies and you feel as if you have enough talent on his roster with both Mike Conley and Marc Gasol, it wouldn't be that crazy if they decided to trade this pick away. But if there is one thing that I do believe that the organization desperately lacks, that is athleticism and 3-point shooting, and not necessarily saying that you're going to get both out of this prospect. However, the one thing that you are definitely going to get is athleticism, and that is a huge reason why I have them selecting Jaren Jackson Jr., a 6'11 forward with a ridiculous 7'4 wingspan. And again, when it comes to his ability to knock down the 3 ball, I'm not too secure with that. However, his athleticism, his length, and his ability to finish strong around the rim may be enough to convince the Memphis Grizzlies to select him 4th overall. And personally, from what I've watched out of him, along with reading other people's mock draft, probably the one thing that stands out the most about Jaren Jackson is the fact that he has a pretty solid basketball IQ. And due to this, it may make the most sense to select him if you are the Memphis Grizzlies, despite the fact his inability to space out the floor. Now with the 5th overall pick, we have the Dallas Mavericks, an organization that in my opinion should have hit the restart button maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, but I understand why they wanted to stay competitive in a Western Conference that they probably felt like they could have taken advantage of with their team play. But it seems as if the lack of productivity from some of the younger players, along with questionable decisions that they made from the front office, is finally catching up with them as they finish with one of the worst records in the NBA this season, which has forced them to basically rebuild, and Mark Cuban has been fairly open with the idea of tanking from this organization moving forward. But unfortunately, with the 5th overall pick in this year's draft class, there's a possibility that you're not going to receive the player that you may need to jumpstart the rebuilding phase for this team. But nevertheless, they should be able to find a pretty solid prospect that should be able to fill in that center position that they have been desperately trying to fill in over the past 5, possibly even 7 years now, which is why I have them selecting Bamba. Now, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. In my opinion, Bamba really doesn't have much going for him outside of his ridiculous wingspan. And when it comes to Bamba, he is your stereotypical rim protector, rim running big, not ridiculously athletic. He's going to catch some lobs, and obviously with a 7'9" or allegedly 7'10" wingspan, he is going to utilize his length. He doesn't run the greatest, but he's definitely not as stiff. He's pretty mobile, especially in a half-court setting, and he doesn't mind taking on the challenge of guarding perimeter players off of a switch on pick and roll. But then again, it only is in college, and I really don't necessarily know how that's going to work out when it comes to the NBA level, but at least he accepts the challenge. So he should be an acceptable player moving forward for the organization and should fill a void that, again, they have been attempting to fill over the last 5 to 7 years. Coming in with the 6th overall pick, we have the Orlando Magic, an organization that, quite frankly, I don't even know what direction they're moving into. This is an organization that I honestly believe should move from Nikola Vucevic. Even though he's a solid contributor, I really believe those are empty stats. However, they just got rid of Elfrid Payton, so it wouldn't make sense for them to go for a point guard. But quite frankly, unless they are forward, as they just selected Jonathan Isaac last year, and it seems as if Aaron Gordon is really coming into his own, everything is up in the air for the Orlando Magic, which is a huge reason why I believe they're going to take a massive swing with either Trae Young or Michael Porter Jr. But in my opinion, like I stated before, because they don't need any more forwards, Trae Young is going to be their guy that they're going to take a massive swing on. In my opinion, so far, because they're going to be expecting a lot out of him since they don't really have a starting point guard, he has a lot of bust potential written on him if he's going to be selected this high. However, Trae Young, a 6'2" point guard that is highly skilled offensively, can space out the floor since he can knock down the jumper, create his own shot, and he is a solid passer despite the fact that he does indeed turn the ball over a lot. Now, on the defensive end, I really don't expect much out of Trae Young, so I don't know how impactful he's going to be as a whole, especially if his shot doesn't knock down as consistently as it did at the collegiate level. But when it comes to Trae Young, I honestly believe he should be a solid prospect, but unfortunately, if the Orlando Magic are expecting him to be a franchise player, there is a huge possibility that he could be a bust. But at this point, who knows, because it's very, very early in the process. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Orlando Magic did something big such as this pick. Moving on to the 7th overall pick, we have the Chicago Bulls, An organization that, in my opinion, they proved me wrong with a few of their players. Lauri Markkanen seems like a pretty solid prospect, and his rookie season went over pretty smoothly, and so when it comes to them filling out some of their lineup, they do have a direction in which they're heading into, which is something that is always great for a young team. Now, obviously, the one hole that they do have is either center position or the small forward position, and I don't necessarily know if they want to take a risk on Michael Porter this early, which is why I have them selecting Wendell Carter with the 7th overall pick. Now, Wendell Carter, because of his height, is more prone to play the power forward position. However, due to his wingspan along with his knack of rebounding, it makes sense to put him at the 5 as well, especially if you have Lauri Markkanen, who's going to be spacing out the floor. But even if they swap positions, it's not that big of a deal. Also, when it comes to Wendell Carter, the one thing that I really liked about his game was his vision and his passing ability in the half-court setting, especially coming out of the post. Being able to find certain players out of the high and low post, especially on a team that features a lot of floor space, with Lauri Markkanen at the 4 and Zach LaVine at the 2, you should be able to get some good passes from Carter because he does have the vision to do so. Now, with the 8th overall pick, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers, and quite frankly, I don't even know how to explain this situation because no one has any information on what exactly LeBron may do entering the offseason. And because of the uncertainty of LeBron and the fact that the Cavaliers have a pretty terrible track record when it comes to drafting players outside of LeBron and Kyrie Irving, I honestly believe that they're willing to take a big enough risk on Michael Porter Jr., and quite frankly, it might actually work out for them. Michael Porter Jr., for those out there who are unaware, unfortunately suffered a significant back injury in the beginning of the season, which kept him sidelined for practically the entire year, and many people have suggested that the back problems are very, very severe. So again, the Cavs are desperate enough while still being dumb enough, but might actually be lucky enough to receive Michael Porter Jr. And for those out there who are unaware of the type of player that Michael Porter Jr. was expected to be before he suffered from injuries, many people have compared him to the next Kevin Durant or possibly the next Joe Johnson. And even though I am really tired of those comparisons, I will say this: Michael Porter Jr., 6'10" forward with a 7-foot wingspan, has a really good knack of scoring, especially when it comes to just pull-up jumpers. He's really athletic, a strong finisher, and shows promise of being a consistent shooter from behind the arc. And so if everything works out and people are just overreacting to the injuries, there could be a really big possibility that he could end up being the best prospect in this year's draft class. But with that being said though, suffering from a major back injury is something that many people have deemed to be a red flag, as that may become a nagging injury and a consistent theme throughout his career, as he more than likely will not be the same player that he once was, and even the player that we knew him as before the injuries. Again, this is at the high school level, some AAU teams, and he did play a few summer league games with some pros, but again, it's not really much that we're going off of. Now, with the 9th overall pick, we have the New York Knicks, an organization that finally was removed from the Carmelo Anthony contract, and it seems as if they're able to reproduce some of his productivity with other role players or just some pretty solid additions such as Tim Hardaway Jr. on this organization. And with a star athlete in Kristaps Porzingis, who definitely needs some help on the offensive end, especially when it comes to creating, I feel as if this is an organization that could go in 2 different directions. But honestly, and I really don't think this is going to happen, but I do believe the New York Knicks should play it safe and just select Mikal Bridges, a 6'7" wingman who has a 7-foot wingspan and has the ability to really guard multiple positions on a switch or even pick up some of the better point guards in the NBA due to his length and his athleticism. So defensively, he's there, and as long as he's able to be a consistent 3-point shooter, he is literally the stereotypical 3-and-D player that almost every team in the NBA would love to have, and we see the type of success that we see from Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum with the Boston Celtics, and this is something that you should be able to receive from Mikal Bridges as well. Now, when it comes to the offensive end, don't really expect him to create too much, or at least don't expect him to create too much at an early age. That is a part of his game that I'm expecting him to continue to grow in. However, when you're on a team that's going to feature Tim Hardaway Jr. and Kristaps Porzingis, there's no real need for him to be a consistent offensive threat outside of just being able to knock down open jumpers and cut through the lane when given the ability to do so. And finally, we have the 10th overall pick from the Philadelphia 76ers, and quite frankly, I really don't know what they're going to do with this pick. I mean, this is an organization that made the playoffs, an organization that has 2 franchise players, And even though it wouldn't hurt them to add another young player on this roster, I honestly just don't know who is going to be the best fit. They definitely need some floor spacing, and it wouldn't hurt for them to have another perimeter player that ranged somewhere around 6'5" to 6'7". If Mikal Bridges is still available, I believe they should select him. However, all of the players that I believe they might be able to select, such as Kevin Knox, more than likely will still be available as time continues to progress. So in my opinion, the Philadelphia 76ers just trade the pick and move down and select Kevin Knox, who I honestly don't believe may not be the best fit for you, because I don't know if he's the most consistent three-point shooter, but having another potential 3-and-D guy definitely will not hurt your chances of winning a championship anytime soon. And with that being said, people, let me know what you think about my mock draft in the comment section below. Like I said before, this is my first mock draft. More information will be revealed, and hopefully I will have an update within the next 2 or 3 weeks, but definitely before the NBA draft. And with that being said, I'll see you all next time. Peace.